I'm Haley B. Miller, and this is Ohio Politics Explained, a podcast where you give us 15 minutes and we give you all the news you need to sound smart and impress your friends.
Welcome back to Ohio Politics Explained. Today, we'll discuss the fight over abortion access, a potential change to the Medicaid system, a former vice president's visit to Ohio, and the latest effort to rein in JobsOhio. Joining you today is Anthony Shoemaker.
Hi, Haley.
So, before we get started, since I haven't bothered you all in a minute, if you find interesting or helpful, please consider leaving us a review or rating on Apple Podcasts. If you don't, pretend I didn't say anything. Our first topic is abortion. As you all likely remember, Ohio voters enshrined abortion rights in the state constitution in 2023. But that hasn't stopped Republicans who oppose abortion from testing the limits. Since the amendment passed, lawmakers have pushed bills to restrict telehealth, reinstate the 24-hour waiting period, and even require fetal birth and death certificates. What do anti-abortion lawmakers and groups say about these efforts?
Yeah, well, anti-abortion groups are saying that the constitutional amendment, even though it easily passed in 2023, doesn't give, unfettered access to abortion, to the pill or the procedure, and that lawmakers are allowed to make some changes on how abortions are regulated in the state.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say that the ultimate goal is to get these policies before the Ohio Supreme Court. I don't think the lawmakers who support these have any doubt that if these were passed by the Ohio House and Senate and signed by Governor Mike DeWine, that there would be lawsuits, that groups would argue that this violates the amendment that was passed in 2023. And Republicans right now have a 6-1 majority on the state Supreme Court, and they're hoping to make that 7-0 come November.
Yeah, I mean, Jennifer Brunner is the only Democrat that's left in statewide office, and Republicans are gunning for her this year. There's 11 bills currently, I think, in the current General Assembly that are abortion related. So even though some people may feel like, we've already voted on abortion, we passed a constitutional amendment, it's a done deal. Doesn't look like it is.
Yeah, and I mean, to that point, do you think abortion's going to come up in the Supreme Court race? There's a pretty crowded Republican primary to challenge Brunner, and then she will be facing another Republican judge in the general election.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to think that it will come up as an issue in some way. I mean, Mike Gondadakis with Ohio Right to Life is saying, if you care about life and that's a big issue for you, the Supreme Court race on the ballot this year is the most important race in the state for people who are pro-life. I mean, obviously also you have a governor race and an attorney general race, and, those are also factor into abortion policy in the state. Nobody really seems to think that it's likely that we'll put another ballot issue up on abortion, but even that is a possibility down the road at some time. I think some other states like Missouri have passed abortion amendments and things at the ballot, but then coming back to overturn those. So down the road you could see another effort to do that.
Yeah, just when we think something is a done deal in Ohio, it is very much not. Let's move on to Medicaid. Ohio could lose an estimated $3 billion in state and federal funds under changes in the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. Because of that, experts say now is the time for state lawmakers to really take a look at Medicaid and decide if it's working as it should. Cut to a bipartisan bill that would shift Medicaid from a managed care model to an administrative services model. What exactly does that entail?
Yeah, well, I mean, in recent years, Ohio has shifted from paying fees for like Medicaid services to these managed care models. And one of the biggest in the state is CareSource over in Dayton. I mean, managing Medicaid money has become big business. I believe over in Dayton, CareSource probably has 4 or 5 buildings downtown. So they're going to try to fight some of these reforms I would expect in this legislation that they wouldn't comment for the story that we had this week. But I think that it's going to be a big fight because there's just so much money in Medicaid.
Yeah, and this would be a pretty substantial change. Senator Beth Liston, one of the co-sponsors of this bill, said it would save the state between $450 million and $850 million a year, which is a decent chunk of change. But again, I think with something as complicated as Medicaid, it takes a lot of effort and, frankly, political willpower to make major changes to the system.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about, $10 million here, $10 million there, I mean, to most of us, that sounds like a lot of money. But when you really think about it, Medicaid costs Ohio around $43 billion a year. So it's substantial.
Yeah, for sure. Our next topic is Mike Pence. The former vice president was in Ohio this week for an event at Denison University. During the discussion, he defended his decision to certify the 2020 election results, even as Trump falsely claimed that he won. Pence also backs the Iran war, which I found interesting because Trump is really under fire for that right now. A lot of his supporters do not.
Right, and I don't think that President Trump's current vice president is a huge fan of the war in Iran. But former Vice President Pence said that he supports the war in Iran and going after their nuclear capabilities. He also said that he supported the action that Trump took earlier in Venezuela. Yeah,
I think Pence is definitely more of a traditional Republican when it comes to foreign policy. Supports more of kind of the hawkish positions, and even said that Iran was something that was discussed a lot during Trump's first term. So again, I just found it to be a really interesting contrast when you have, people like Tucker Carlson, former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, being really critical of this new sort of interventionist version of Trump.
Yeah, I mean, it's Pence is kind of sounding more like the traditional kind of Bush-Cheney era type Republican in on foreign policy. The other interesting thing that I thought that Pence brought up that you don't hear Republicans talk a whole lot about anymore is the national debt. Pence said that the national debt was actually the most pressing issue facing the nation.
Yeah, you do hear Republicans now and again talk about that because they really want to rein in government spending. But to your point, if I remember right, the Trump administration recently proposed a bunch more money for the Department of Defense. There's departments across the federal government that, are racking up dollars. And I think this idea of lowering the debt and passing a balanced budget, which Ohio lawmakers have to do, it seems like kind of a pipe dream at this point.
Yeah, and the other thing that I was kind of listening to hear if Pence was going to talk about, because Pence often talks about faith and religion whenever he's giving one of these public speeches, and President Trump made news recently with his fights with the Pope and the AI generated Trump Jesus image. Pence did not touch that at all.
Yeah, maybe not his favorite topic to address. Although we've heard, current Vice President J.D. Vance defending President Trump over this, despite the fact that Vance is Catholic. He converted to Catholicism in 2019. He has been at odds with the current Pope over some sort of he's been at odds with the current Pope over, various thoughts on theology and things like that. So just a very interesting time for the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and the Pope has been really targeting the war in Iran, and talking about peace, which popes traditionally do, and that's kind of put him and Trump at odds on that.
We will end today with JobsOhio. A Republican state senator wants the private economic development agency to open its books. Senate Bill 420 would make JobsOhio meetings and records public and require an annual performance audit. This is the latest fallout after JobsOhio sponsored a podcast tied to the resignation of former Ohio State President Ted Carter. And the criticism is coming from both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, I mean, for people who don't remember, JobsOhio was set up in 2011 by former Governor Kasich, and one of the most controversial things about it, setting it up as a nonprofit, was it kind of gets it away from traditional audits and investigations and open records and some of that kind of stuff. Attorney General Yost came out talking about how JobsOhio needs to be more transparent. Even former Governor Kasich talked about how the Carter scandal was kind of a signal that there might need to be some kind of a reform for JobsOhio. It's a very secretive organization, and lawmakers on both sides are pushing for it to be more transparent and public.
Yeah, and I mean, it's secretive, and it was designed to be that way. I mean, when Kasich launched this, he and other proponents of this said, they need to be able to do what they do without the bureaucracy of government. They need to be able to negotiate in private. But, I think there's a question now of whether they're drifting from their mission for a little bit. Do they need to be getting involved in podcasts when they should be focused on things like Anduril or Intel or these things that are going to bring jobs to the state? So it'll be interesting to see if the scrutiny continues. Yeah,
and it's also, you're getting a hint of the kind of money that JobsOhio throws around. I mean, if they're able to spend $15,000 for one episode of a podcast, it makes you wonder what they're spending on other things.
A fun fact before you go. Over the years, Ohio lawmakers have added more than 200 designated days, weeks, and months to the state calendar. Most are bipartisan and non-controversial, some aren't. Our colleague Jesse Ballmer did a fun story looking at this, which you can check out on our website.